Good morning and welcome to Pi World. I'm Gregg LeBlanc. I'm the author of all of Norton's jokes that are good. I'm the vice president of product at OSIsoft, and my team works with me to be the curator of the product roadmap that you'll be hearing about later today. And in fact, we've already made some adjustments to the Pi World schedule based on feedback in order to get that product content up front on day one. Now, you're going to get best practices talks, that product update. You also have some great opportunities to learn face-to-face with representatives at the Pi World Expo. So be sure to plan your day accordingly because there's a lot of content to get through because we've been really busy since last we met. And like you heard this morning, we are dedicated to critical operations. And we're laying that groundwork to kind of evolve your critical infrastructure and then create revolutionary opportunities to leverage that operational data elsewhere in your organization. And today, we're going to talk about the journey we've been on. We've made some investments in 2017 and 2018, and you'll see how they're paying off here in 2019. Like Bryce said, we believe that people with data can transform their world and that we have ingenious users. And when you pair them with data and curiosity, they can make the world a better place. And that's why we created the Pi system, and that's why we're here at Pi World. We're gathered here to talk about all that work our developers and our ingenious users have been doing. And because transforming your world is a lot of work and time-consuming, we're trying to help you out with software investments that we've been making. So like Bryce said, your operational data world is centered on the asset and the plant. But we know there's more data out there, like Bryce was saying. So we are talking about how we are giving more data to users that need it from more sources so that you can connect to community like Salem because they're presented with a problem and they need to work to solve it. And we want to talk about the investments in that Pi system that everyone really relies on. That's why we're here. And then how we're getting more investments out of our pervasive data collection investments, as well as delivering more of that data in context to the enterprise and then sharing that securely to the cloud through OSIsoft Cloud Services. So you hear about all this today during the keynote. So what you should expect from OSIsoft is really to be a data infrastructure, a system of record. And we give you the tools to unlock that data and enable your users to do those ingenious things you heard our new President Michael talk about, and Pat and Bry. You're going to hear it a few more times. But that's because we really do believe in you. Last year, we discussed how you could expand your systems of record, your data infrastructure, by lighting up some of that dark data. And we talked about adding dimension, scale, and scope to your data. Now, that's something that we actually applied to our own Pi system installations, and that's what we'll talk about today. And you'll hear about that through the three ways we talk about our product roadmap. It's manageable systems. It's creating a seamless infrastructure from those sensors to the Pi server, to the enterprise, to the cloud, and then increasing the scope and value of that data. The work is important because we know your operations aren't getting any simpler. Bry gave several examples, and we can think about that power plant we talked about last year. There are a lot of stakeholders, and new demands seem to appear almost daily. If you think about this ecosystem here, oh, wait, look. That's our building. That's not just any building there. That's the San Leandro Tech Campus. And we will call it the SLTC throughout this morning. And it turns out we are not just a passive citizen on that grid. We are trying to be a good grid citizen. We are trying to later become a power producer. So that involves a lot of data. And it also involves continuously improving our own operations. Now, the San Leandro Tech Campus is part of a LEED certified green campus, and we are the first building. Where we are is the first building on that screen there. And if you actually come visit the San Leandro Tech Center, and we encourage you to do that, come see Norton, come see Bry, come see me. You'll notice that those other two buildings on your left aren't actually pointed that direction. They're pointed elsewhere, and actually only one of those two buildings exists right now. But we have taken the things we've learned from the first building and applied it to the other building, and it's going to continue. So this entire campus is highly instrumented, and we use it to create kind of a template to tell the story about manageable systems. That means customers, large and small, told us about their patching and their software management strategies and how they need us to invest in our software to help meet those expectations, because we know most of you probably are not in IT, except Norton, he's in IT. And no, he's not anymore. But we know you're busy running those big operations, and so we need to help out. So we're happy to report that many of those operations rely on a Pi system. That Pi system is really the infrastructure that takes that operational data from those automation systems and sensors and then puts it in a means that you can store it, contextualize it, and then later employ it in all those business opportunities that you see in operational improvements. And that's how you realize your operational objectives, by empowering those users with that data. Now, I'm going to need a little more room to tell this story here, because over the years, the Pi server has actually grown a lot of different components around it to become the Pi system that we talk about today. So you're here at Pi World because the Pi server is part of that critical operational infrastructure, and we want that core Pi server to remain up-to-date and operational for you. And that can be a lot of work. So we invested in making our software more manageable. We concentrated on building new ways to deliver patches to the Pi server without changing the feature set, so that you can actually use a set of tools that we created that help you deploy a test environment and then evaluate those new patches and make sure they work with all your applications. And that gives you the confidence to update and adopt the latest version of the Pi server to stay secure and up to date. Now, in order to talk about this a little bit more, I'd like to invite Chris Nelson up to the stage. He is our Vice President of Software Development. I'm pretty sure he can't contain his excitement to tell you about all the stuff we've been doing. Chris?
Thank you, Greg, and welcome to Pi World EMEA 2019 in Gothenburg, Sweden. Have to admit, this is my first time in Sweden. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I hope you are as well, and I'm not quite sure if I'm coming home because I haven't done that DNA test yet. So last year, Greg and I presented that OSIsoft was focused on extending its market-leading operational data infrastructure, the Pi system, to the edge and to the cloud. I'm super excited about this conference where we're starting to show you those investments paying off in new infrastructure capabilities that are finally reaching their way into your operations. That is the theme this week. Please engage with us throughout the week on those particular enhancements. Again, use this keynote as a guide. We will be introducing the high-level topics and themes throughout the week. Use this as a guide to really what sessions, which tracks you should go to. Please go to the Product Expo. We have staffed that with our developers and our technical staff to answer your product and technical questions. And as always, stop by our valued partners to check out how their solutions are layered on top of our data infrastructure to bring you enhanced capabilities. As Greg mentioned, we moved into a new headquarters in 2016, and that's a gold LEED certified building with smart automation systems and well building systems. In order to get situational awareness of all these systems, we deployed the Pi system in our production environment. We started very much like you did when you deployed your Pi system. We have a production network within our building. We have a production network in an offsite data center, a DRT. We deployed a connector to connect to our building automation systems and all those particular systems, wrote it into our Pi server to give that data to our users, our employees who are primarily engineers, to look at that data and optimize our building automation system. We built that system out over time using all the capabilities of the Pi system. And we deploy our emerging technologies into there so that we can get empathy on, as we develop that software, how we will actually operate it, and we can give you that guidance when we release it. We use Pi Cloud Connect very heavily to move data around those particular systems, and we also share this data with our partners and vendors so that they can help us optimize the building. Last year, Greg and I used way too many slides, So we wanted to make this a little bit more complex and show you our actual system. So if you can go to the tablet, please. This is the home screen of our particular building. And again, it's not going to look very interesting because everybody is asleep and the building is kind of asleep. But we'll go through that as we give the presentation. On the right-hand side, you will see an Explore square. These are all the scenarios where we've used the Pi system to optimize our building, and we're going to be showing that throughout the whole Product Expo. I want to bring your attention to the middle square, the building KPI. That is showing us our energy usage month to date compared with a year ago. And you can see that we are using 3,331 kilowatt hours so far this month. And it is roughly 12% higher than last year. And we know about this because it's been a potentially hot summer in California, and we've been using our cooling system more than we did last year. So this is why we know this, is because we have that situational awareness. I want to double click on this more details, which uses the drill-in navigation features of Pi Vision. I like this slide because it gives us our design footprint, 8.5 kilowatts a square foot. You can see so far this year, we're at 8.3, and last year we were at 8.81, and the previous year we were much higher than that. And that's because we deployed the Pi system, got that situational awareness, and we're able to optimize the systems. Back to the slides, please. So at this conference, we are announcing Pi Server 2018 SP3, the latest, stable, reliable, secure version of the Pi system, and we highly recommend that you make plans to upgrade to this particular version. We are changing our release cadence when it comes to the Pi server, and particularly this version, Pi Server 2018. We will be deploying highly operational and security patches to this particular version. Very much like Gregg said, without a lot of features, so you know exactly what are in these patches, so that as you deploy them into your production environments, you have the confidence that that system is not going to have any downtime or any disruption. We are also wrapping that with deployment scripts so that you can easily test these patches in non-production environments. And we're also giving you test recommendations and those tests out on GitHub so that you can use them and expand them for your particular need. We're also a couple weeks away from releasing Pi Vision 2019. You may have heard me talk about Pi Vision 4 in the past. That was a mix of highly requested features and a technology overhaul. That technology overhaul was preventing us from getting those features to you, so we decided to take those features and put it into a new release on our current technology stack while we continue to further the technology overhaul. Another thing I want to bring your attention to this week is OMF. With the release of Pi Web API 2019 that will come with Pi Server 2018 SP3, lots of numbers there, we now have moved the OMF endpoint for the Pi system into a core component, the Pi Web API. You can now write OMF ingestion applications that data can be sent to the Edge Data Store, the Pi system, and OSIsoft Cloud Services, sometimes all at the same time if you particularly need that. So again, if you can switch back to the tablet, I wanted to show you a quick highlight of some of the Pi Vision 2019 capabilities around the ad hoc trending. I am running Pi Vision 2019 in our production facility, and I spent a lot of time on the 4th floor. So I'm going to go ahead and drill into the 4th floor. We've built this floor schematic in ProcessBook many years ago, and we were able to migrate that into Pi Vision using the Pi ProcessBook to Pi Vision migration utility. Please ask us about that throughout the week if you're a ProcessBook customer. We believe it's our responsibility to provide you the tools to help you migrate from ProcessBook to Pi Vision. I sit over here on the left-hand side, so I'm going to go and look at the air handler that serves our particular side of the building. And I'm going to quickly just go up on the left, the top right, and look at the room temperature. I'm going to go ahead and create a new ad hoc trend that shows me the temperature and whether or not we're cooling or not. I can close that ad hoc workspace, go back to my floor schematic on the 4th floor, and I'm just going to compare temperatures between where I sit and the conference room that I spend a lot of time in. So down here is the conference room we call the Bat Cave, not the pop-up trend. Let me double click. Whoop. Well, it's my fat fingers here that are doing that. So I'm going to pick another air handler. Again, up on the top right, you could see room temperature. I'm going to go ahead and just click that and add it to my workspace. So you can see how you can quickly go through many displays, and there's a browsing feature here too where you could add lots of trends to an ad hoc workspace, and then you get the typical functionality of our trends where you can have cursors, you can pan and zoom with your particular finger, and you can also get more insights. So that's really a quick introduction into Pi Vision 2019 in the ad hoc trending tool. Please go to the product talks later on today and get a tour of this at the Product Expo. Back to the slides, please. So we have lots of Pi system enhancements for you this week. Please engage with us. I hit many of these, and Greg talked about them earlier. The one I want to bring your attention to is the Pi Integrator. The last release of the Pi Integrator, we brought broad support for Amazon Web Services, and we have a release planned later on this year for Google Cloud Platform. Please stop by the Product Expo booth, engage with the Integrator team, learn about the new enhancements, and see if that is something that's relevant to you. And I'm going to call Greg back up here.
All right, thanks, Chris. Hey, can you stick around? Because I think I got some more demos. All right, yeah. I love seeing a live demo. It just makes the heart rate go right up, and you feel that rush of adrenaline. So anyway, as you can see, the operational data landscape of the SLTC is quite vast. And we're looking at the temperature after hours. Actually, yesterday it was about 78 in a couple of the rooms there because we have this heat wave going through right now. So it's kind of interesting. We're trying to do the demo, and we're looking at going, oh, wow, look at that. So that's the thing. When we get that data into people's hands, we can actually make adjustments. And while we all may agree that our building may not be critical operations, we do get some feedback that is critical of how the building operates. So that might qualify. And it turns out, in order to take action on some of that feedback, we had to have some more data. And let's talk about that next set of product developments, and we talk about our seamless infrastructure. And that's about getting the data you need from the data sources and delivering it to the people who can actually take action on that critical feedback. So we've been investing in the seamless infrastructure for a while in the product, and at the SLTC, Chris already mentioned that we use Pi Cloud Connect quite a bit to move operations data from our operations Pi server out to other Pi servers for various purposes. Now, we did a big upgrade to Pi Cloud Connect so it can support other identity providers. That means you can log in with a different kind of Microsoft account or something. And we did that upgrade with zero downtime for Pi Cloud Connect customers. So you should check it out. If you need to share data from one Pi server to another Pi server securely without using VPNs, Pi Cloud Connect is actually pretty great. Now, we've also got some more things to talk about because, as I said, the system has been growing. So I need to make some more room and talk about that instrumentation project that leverages the OMF that Chris was talking about. That's the OSIsoft message format. We were starting to look at sensors that may not have a Pi interface or a Pi connector available to them, but we need to get that data somewhere where someone can actually use it. So like Chris said, we enhanced the Web API 2019 to have a native OMF message ingress so that it's easy to write data into the Pi system from whatever, from sensors or applications or whatever you like. And it's about getting those data into the server as expediently as possible with the minimum amount of effort. So that means we could use all that data from those sensors in one Pi system. And that means, like you saw Chris show you, that we can actually use Pi Vision and get a seamless picture of different network topology data arriving in the same Pi system. And from that Pi system, we can choose to share that data to, say, a systems integrator or a vendor or just another area of OSIsoft securely. Or say, use that Pi integrator that Chris was talking about to, say, build a Power BI dashboard. Or even move all that data to a set of Pi systems that are not on the operations network to our, you heard us mention the hosting provider we use, which is a data center. We cloud connect the data over there so that we can share it to those more data-hungry users, and we don't have to have them on the critical operations network for the system. But we also needed to send data to the cloud directly for some of these sensors, or maybe they had to go to an IoT platform first. You heard Bri talk about IoT, so I couldn't be left out. I have to mention that too. We wanted to get that full perspective how the SLTC operates, so we needed to get that data also into a way that we could use it. So we sometimes would write it directly to OSIsoft Cloud Services, or we'd write a little data pump from an IoT platform into OSIsoft Cloud Services. You'll hear us call it OCS here frequently. And that's because IoT platforms are not a system of record, but OSIsoft Cloud Services is. And finally, we connected our Pi systems directly to OCS using this component that we call Pi to OCS. It does what it says. It's a nice way to send that data right up to OCS so that we can actually securely share it and use it in other applications that are cloud native. So we also use that to interact with vendors and partners, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. So we started, like Chris said, from this kind of typical diagram. We have an operations network, we have our business network, we have VPNs involved, we've got Cloud Connect, we have vendor data coming in. And we really tried to leverage each component of our pervasive data collection strategy. Pervasive data collection means we are always investing in our interfaces and our connectors. That's our DNA, that's what we do. However, we also have more components. So some of these sensors really would benefit from something called the Edge Data Store. You're going to hear a lot about that at this conference. It's a smaller component that runs on a small footprint, and Chris is going to talk about it a little bit more in a minute. We also have that open source support. Anyone who can write to our APIs, say Web API or OCS or EDS API, and we leverage that as well. And if you have tiny sensors, if they can understand the JavaScript object notation, they can send data via OMF directly to OCS or, say, from that IoT platform. So that means our network actually had to evolve a little bit. We had to contact IT. Thanks, Norton, for hooking us up. And we put in a dedicated secondary sensing network. Now, you saw that in Bri's talk. It's actually a network that doesn't talk to the production network, and it doesn't talk to the business network. You can provision IoT devices with a little security, and then they go directly to the internet. And that means that still, most of our data comes from that critical operations control network, those backnet servers, those Modbus, those kind of connectors that people use day to day. But we also pull that data in through OCS so that we can get a comprehensive picture of how we're operating. So let's review our first use case that we decided to light up. And I say light up because we have smart windows. They're very smart. In fact, they usually pretty much outsmart us most of the time. And they produce a lot of data. And they always tell us how they're doing. We started noticing, though, that maybe what they say they're doing isn't exactly what they're doing. And so we started noticing that employees were putting up umbrellas to block the sun that might be coming through a view glass window that decided to take a break. So we took a hardware platform, a little IoT device, and we used the Dynamic Systems fog lamp firmware from the open source code repository that they produce, and we then built that into the device, and it sends OMF messages to that OMF endpoint on the Web API. That means that we can actually measure the transmitted sunlight through the view glass and compare it with what the view glass thinks they're doing. So to have us delve into that a little bit more, I'd like to invite Chris back up so he can poke around on his tablet and tell us what's going on. Chris?
Thanks, Greg. This was a great challenge that you gave to us. And in order to solve that challenge, we needed more granular data. And in order to get that granular data, we had to do exactly what Gregg said, which was deploy additional devices. So we went on the internet, we bought some fidget sensors, we bought some Raspberry Pi boards and some nice looking chassis, and we put these devices together and installed some of those components, and now we can deploy them throughout our building to get that more granular information. So let's go back to the use case that Gregg said. Can you please switch to the tablet? So we have this electrochromatic glass, view glass, and this was an interesting system to just even get going. Here's a schematic of our building, and each one of these windows is independently controlled. So you can see how much fun it was trying to synchronize them into not making people crazy because of the different tint levels on each window. But again, once we got all that going, we still had employees calling and complaining there's too much light coming in. And we didn't know, is this a situation where it was a personal employee's feeling? Is it too much light or not? So that's why we needed to get that more granular data. So we took those devices and deployed them on the inside of the building so that we can measure the ambient light coming in after the glass is tinted. We then could sit there and say, how would we want to actually consume this data? Right? And the best way I can explain that is we used the power of the Pi system. We created an asset in our asset framework to represent that device. We could encode some logic in that asset saying, okay, if the tint level is this, here's the light that we would expect to be coming into the building. We then were able to define asset analytics to say, okay, if we're measuring a light that is higher than that particular limit, create an event frame so that we can mark when that happened to see if it quickly comes back in or whether or not it lasts for a long time. Once we create that event frame, we can now proactively notify our building management that says, okay, we're experiencing a high light condition on one side of our building. Now when that employee calls, or many employees call, and they say, hey, we're having a particular problem here, it's way too bright, we can't utilize, I think it's happening over here. Sorry about that. But one thing that can actually happen is then we can say, hey, we're proactively know about that. We're actively fixing that particular situation. This, what I think, is the actual power of IoT devices integrated in with the Pi system, because you can layer on top all that rich, more granular data and utilize all the functionality of the Pi system. And this just brings you better insights that drive those critical operations. How about we hear about another scenario? Gregg?
All right, thanks, Chris. Yes, as Chris knows, I look best by low light, so I'm one of those people that calls in and says, oh my God, there's too much light. So in November 8th, 2018, we discovered our second use case. Early that morning, I got a frantic text message from my parents. There was a fire near them in Paradise, California, and they were evacuating. There was fire in their backyard already. And by the time I had learned that they had rescued their neighbor's dog and evacuated safely and were headed down to the Bay Area, the 100-kilometer-per-hour winds had already blown that smoke from that fire down to the SLTC. And for days, we had some of the worst air quality on record. And it remained in the Bay Area so bad that it was hard to breathe, hard to see, even in the hallways of the SLTC. And even after we learned that my parents' home had been spared, but much of their neighborhood had not been, we still had an air quality problem. So this wildfire and others like it make the SLTC's ventilation system work overtime to try and keep that air healthy and safe for the employees there. So in order for us to actually be better prepared for future air quality events, we started deploying IoT sensors that would help us understand how the air quality was being impacted by external conditions so that we can keep the SLTC healthy and safe for the workers that are in. So for more on this, I'd actually like to invite our field correspondent back up to the stage and talk about how we plan to use some of this data. Hey, Chris.
Thank you, Gregg. So again, little different approach on this one is we realized that we needed probably a little bit better than a $100 sensor, which was our previous one. And And we have been working very closely with our partner, Cositron, who we have deployed in our building as an air purification system on our air handlers. We went to them because they had that expertise. They brought in one of their partners, AirThings, that have these commercial sensors where we can start to measure those bad things that could be in the air so that we can start to take action. And the whole theory here is you got to measure it before you can devise the strategies around it. So we were looking at how much radon, how much ozone, how much CO2, and there's been recent studies that actually can guide us on what are the limits of these in our particular building. So we deployed them. We brought the Cositron folks, the AirThings folks to our building, and we deployed these sensors throughout the building based on their recommendations. If you switch back to the tablet, please. So I'm going to go back to that floor schematic, and on the 4th floor that I spent a lot of time on. And what we did is we deployed these additional sensors, and I want to show you the more granular information that these commercial sensors will bring us as opposed to what we're getting from the building automation system. So I'm going to go near the elevator bay on the 4th floor, the CO414, and let's see if my fingers can get to that air handler. And again, I'm going to do the same approach. I'm going to take the temperature that is in that air handler, and I'm going to replace that ad hoc workspace, close that down, and then I'm going to go back to my floor schematic so that I can get the data from that AirThings sensor. So there we go. I'm going to double-click on that. And you can see this is a much more accurate sensor than what we deployed with the Raspberry Pi. I'm going to take the temperature here, add it, close that out, and I'm going to add the CO2. And you could see, let's kill one of this cooling. We don't need that. So you could see the blue and the purple lines are the particular temperature. You could see the reading that we're getting from the building automation system. It's not as accurate as the one coming from the AirThings sensor because we're getting more granular information. But the funny part about this is CO2. So we had the Cositron team come in. We had the AirThings team come in. Of course, we were there with our systems engineers and our developers, and we invited the executives in to meet the Cositron folks and the AirThings folks. And one of the sensors started to alarm. There was too much CO2 in the conference room that we were all meeting in, and everybody started pointing at me. I didn't get it. But you could see how this information is much more granular and can actually complement the system coming from your building automation system. Back to slides.
Wait, I just thought of a critical operation, at least one that's critical to us. Remember how we talked about dark data last year? Remember that? Yeah, that was awesome. And some of the most critical data, Chris, coming from our operations is actually not instrumented on our control network or in our IT network. It's actually on our automatic espresso machines. That's why it's dark roast data. And this use case is super fresh. We've instrumented the automatic coffee machines down in the break room area, the cafeteria area, so that we can actually start to detect some of those funny noises they start to make, because the time when the funny noise starts and then when it goes down for repair can be quite long. And so we would like to recognize that coffee is critical to our software development process. And so we'd like to increase employee uptime by decreasing machine downtime before it's too latte to take action. Hey, Chris, tell us about this.
That's a good one. So, as Bry was up here telling you about his role, I can summarize my role pretty easily. I just need to make sure the coffee machines are working so when the developers need it, they have it. Because if you've worked with developers and they don't have coffee, they're very irritable. So building automation, or the building management staff always hears from me when coffee is not available or one of those machines is down. So switch back to the tablet, please. This information, we put a sensor behind the coffee machine to try to detect what was going on, and we're writing that up into OSIsoft Cloud Services. Throughout this week, we have a new preview component within OSIsoft Cloud Services. Oh, hold on a second here. All right. Do we want to do this? I'm going to have to go through and log in again. Let me just... Yep. I'm going to skip that one because I can show you this in the Product Expo, and I will be coming back to this. But we have a new component in OSIsoft Cloud Services that is a trend. And you can utilize that trend to quickly get that information. And let me go ahead and log in and let Greg go on with the presentation. But we'll get back to this in the next section.
All right. Well, Chris gets Norton to do a note. Oh, you're not going to let Norton do the IT thing for you?
So the difference with this particular sensor on the coffee machine as opposed to the other ones is we have installed the Edge Data Store. And the Edge Data Store is the one that is collecting the data from the particular sensors and sending that up into OSIsoft Cloud Services. I'm happy to announce that we've reached a milestone with the Edge Data Store, and we're calling it a lighthouse release because we're looking for customers and partners that are really aligned to the scenario in which we have designed the initial version. And if you are interested in this, please go to the Product Expo pod. Two names I would reference is Chris Feltz, he's the strategic product manager for this, and Bry Dillon's team, who is really running these, bringing these commercial technologies to market. We have a number of partners with us this week that are utilizing the Edge Data Store for some very interesting scenarios. Several of them are over at the Product Expo pod. I highly encourage you to go over there and learn how they're using the Edge Data Store to drive their solutions and why they are looking and enthusiastic about the Edge Data Store.
All right, cool. Thanks, Chris. While you log in, I'm going to tell them another little bit of a story because this brings us to our final waypoint on this journey this morning, and that's the increased scope and value of the data. So luckily, you're actually not going to hopefully miss that demo because we're going to talk about it more here because we are trying to bring more data to more audiences from more sources, and that's really what we mean by increasing the scope and value of your data. If you have an operation that's never really had data visibility before, that can be a magical experience. So we've been investing in those technologies to make that simple and easy and reduce some of that IT overhead to get those things deployed and stay up to date. So increasing the scope and value of the data means taking that IoT data that we were talking about, and we've deployed a variety of ways this morning in order to show you how we've been making use of all that data here. So in OSIsoft Cloud Services, we're actually able to collaborate better with partners and remote operations, and they get to write a single version of their application, and they don't have to deploy it down on the operations Pi server. Also, we don't have to provision accounts for them on our network and then, say, use VPNs or check and see if the version compatibility is the same. We're really in control of who gets to see the data and when. And that's one of the big advancements that we're bringing to you inside of OSIsoft Cloud Services. There are a lot of things going on there. So please check them out at the demo center, the Expo Center. We talked about data ingress, a high-fidelity way to get your data from Pi. They're easy to write and fun to use. And you can use open source. We have data ingress and all these other services, but those identity providers, that means you can use Google if you want to log in, or Microsoft. It's up to you and your IT department. And we also have a great set of RESTful APIs, so you can build those things. Customers can use them to develop applications or data science projects. Additionally, you can have partners participate with you as well. So to talk about how partners have been working with OCS, I'd like to invite Chris back to the stage.
I like the field correspondent better.
All right, field correspondent, take it away.
So quick, back to the tablet. Now that I'm logged in again, and you know that, here was the actual trend. If we go over to the search and we just look for coffee, you can see here is all the information coming from that sensor. And just real quick, for the sake of time, we'll go ahead and trend the temperature. And then you can get all the existing expected functionality from us, trend cursors and things of that nature. But let's go back to really OSIsoft Cloud Services. And I'm really enthused about where we are today. At San Francisco earlier this year, we were very close to release. We went general availability on June 1st. with our initial version, and we already have many more features and capabilities to talk to you about this week. So let's do a tour of OSIsoft Cloud Services first. Let's look at namespaces. So before this, you actually sign up with OSIsoft Cloud Services. We provision you a customer account, and then you start to add users to it, and then you can start to leverage its functionality. Within that customer account, you want to provision data. It may be based on environments, like production, development, and staging, or geography. Here you can see that I'm showing you our setup, which is production, development, and staging. Oh, this might have been my script from San Francisco, Gregg. But there is some more information on this screen that Gregg will be talking about. See if you can understand that. But I'm going to move on here and show you a lot of this data in the production namespace. Gregg mentioned earlier about that ingenious name that we have to get data from your production Pi systems up into OCS, Pi to OCS. That's an agent that we deploy next to your Pi system to make it easy for you to get all the data that's in that Pi system or a subset up into OSIsoft Cloud Services. Let me go back to the story that we're going here. We have SLTC that has a rich set of data. We've deployed Pi to OCS there, and are moving that up into OSIsoft Cloud Services. We've done that in our Philadelphia office, too, where we have a lot of our IT data coming into. And we actually deployed it onto our old Pi system from our old building so that we can start to perform data science on this data set. Here you can see, I'm going to switch to this SLTC. You can see I get information about the Pi system that it's connected to. And you can see that I'm moving over 19,000 tags in real time from that system up into OSIsoft Cloud Services. Being the nature of software as a service, we know exactly what version is deployed, and we know the state of that version. So you can see here, when we detect that we've loaded a new version of Pi to OCS and it hasn't been deployed, we can proactively notify you and say, hey, you should be updating that agent. But again, we want you to do that on your time so that you ensure confidence that it doesn't affect your production system. So now that all this data is up into OSIsoft Cloud Services, as people utilize this data, it's not affecting your production environments. But again, we want to perform data science on some of this data. So there's a new feature that we're talking about this week called data views. And that allows you to build basically a data set that is ready to participate in data science efforts. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So these data views, I'm going to switch my namespace here to production, and you can see the data views that I have. I'm going to take a look at this 1600 unit performance, and I'm going to go ahead and edit that data view. The first thing you got to do is define a query pattern to get the streams into your data set. And then you can actually create the structure. And this structure is created basically on facts and features. These are the things that describe what you're trying to measure. And then you have a list of measures or dimensions in occupied status, temp, percent heating, percent cooling. The key here is that in our new building, we have embedded occupancy sensors in all of our rooms. So we know if somebody's in there, and we can take that into account in our algorithms to make sure that we're producing the right information. I'm going to cancel out of that and go over to our 77 unit data view. And it looks very similar. Define your query pattern, and then look at the data set. And you can see that this data set doesn't have that occupied column. But this is very valuable because within our algorithms, if we know this, we can take this into account. So our algorithms can run against the 777 data and the 1600 data, and it can perform the right results. Lastly, I'm not going to show you this, but I can create data views that combine all that information, giving us a much bigger data set that we can perform our algorithms on. Now you may ask, show me all that AI, show me all that machine learning, show me all that data science. Well, that's not something that we do at OSIsoft. Our job is to reliably collect all your real-time data from your control systems, your IoT sensors, get them into our data stores, make that available through organization, data cleansing, those types of things, and deliver it to whoever or whatever needs it. That may be the users that we so believe are our data heroes. It may be these AI algorithms, or it may be another particular system. So we have a rich set of partners that provide data science to you. There is also a number of commercial products that can do these AI algorithms. Back to the slides, please. One such partner is Maya HTT. They are a leading supplier of digital twin technology and the algorithms that detect anomalies and outliers. We were able to work with Maya HTT to deploy those services into the cloud and natively connect to our OSIsoft cloud services. They were able to build a digital twin of our building with some information from us, and they were able to run their algorithms on the data set that we provided them in OSIsoft cloud services. We literally didn't have to do anything other than add Maya's employees to our tenant and share with them the data. They then hooked up their application and were able to build a digital twin, which is in the middle of the bottom screen, and then perform their outliers. And an example of that is the screenshot to the right. Our job in this, again, I want to be very clear, is to collect the data, reliably and securely store that data, and deliver that data in a way that is consumable by either the users or those algorithms. That's our job. Maya HTT will be at our OSIsoft Cloud Services booth. Please stop by there if you want to get a real live demonstration of this application. We also have a number of other partners that are with us this week. Please stop by the Product Expo booth and see how they are consuming OSIsoft Cloud Services. Last but not least, so again, the demos that I showed you are with our production Pi system. Okay, very hard for us to build live demonstrations that relate to the diversity of the industries in this crowd. So we decided to pick power. It's the one thing that I think unites us both as industrial users and just home users. We got a lot of stuff in the afternoon for product talks. We have a lot of best practices on day 3. And again, go to the expo room. And I'd like to invite my colleague Gregg to talk about the announcements that we're making this week.
Yeah, just to summarize what Chris has been showing you, we have that North American version of OCS available today. We've got PyServer 2018 SP3, the new integrator release with web services, support for Amazon Web Services, and many connectors and interfaces. So stop by those booths and talk about it. And then we talked about Vision's going to be available soon, and PyWeb API 2019 with OMF Ingress. But Chris, we've been super busy. I think we may have another thing that we can share, because I was looking at this slide and a number caught my eye. And I was like, hey, 2 billion data streams. Did you know that we think that's how much data is being tracked in the Pi systems across all of the world? And that's a testament to all the work that people have been doing with the Pi system and building up that critical infrastructure so they can make better data-driven decisions. And you think about our building, there's a lot of data around it. Just each one of those houses probably has a smart meter, and it has 10 to 20 measurements on it. And then if we think about where we are today in Gothenburg, and we zoom out, we think of all the data that's around us. And in 2020, it's projected that the EU will actually have 200 million smart electric meters. Now, let's see, if I do a little math, that turns into something that is big. And if we built cloud services correctly, and we can just scale it out to 11 to make it collect all that data, we have a cloud scale system of record that's as big as you need it to be. And so I challenged Chris at Pi World San Francisco to build one of those, to track all that data. And they did. They scaled up an OCS deployment so it could track the equivalent of 2 billion streams in a single location. And that data was usable. It was, we actually did demos with the data. And we were able to show how you could solve problems big and small. So no matter what size your deployment, OCS can add something to your data infrastructure story. Now, that was for Pi World San Francisco. And as I challenged Chris, hey, you know, the world is a little bigger. What if we actually were able to deliver OCS in time for Pi World in Gothenburg in Western Europe? And today, I'm proud to say that through the hard work of our teams and motivation, we have been able to deliver a preview of OCS for EU customers. That means a single account can help you store data where you want globally. If you want some data in North America and you want some data in Europe, you can do that. And you can govern that access securely so that you are sure that the right users are seeing the right data in the right region. So talk to the OSIsoft Cloud Services booth to talk about your data placement needs and how this can benefit you. Thank you for all your attention today and all the hard work of our teams. I look forward to talking to you later this week. Take advantage of your time here, and welcome to Pi World. Thank you.